Big Break Pod. Guess what? Today we have an incredible guest. You don't want to miss this one. It's Bill Barretta of Muppets fame. Come on, man. You don't want to miss this. Stick around. What a lovely day indeed it is. Today, my guest is going to be Bill Barretta. He's been working with the Muppets for over 30 years. Most recently was a writer, co-creator, actor on Muppets Mayhem, streaming on Disney+. That also won an Emmy-award in the Outstanding Family Series in 2024. So very excited to have him on here. Bill, right on the outset, I will also say, has his own podcast. It's called the Barretta Brothers Podcast, and you can find that on YouTube and also at thebarrettabrothers.com. It is a great podcast where he has some really fantastic guests on his show with him and his brother, so I highly recommend checking that out. But in the meantime, I want to tell you sort of why and how I met Bill, because I think it's a quick story worth telling, which is that my brother, executive producer Chris Eber, who is executive producer on Muppets Mayhem and has also been a producer on many other Muppets programs, going all the way back to the Bohemian Rhapsody video that was put out, I think around 2010. He was involved in that project. My brother actually introduced me to Bill because there was a time that I was going to my brother and just kicking some ideas around him for sort of what I kind of wanted to do in the coming years. This was probably about a year and a half ago. I was kind of thinking about sort of what's going to be next for me and kind of, if I would move out of Florida and Miami at some point. And if I did, what would I do? And it was actually my idea to sort of start to explore maybe an MFA program. I graduated from the University of Florida with a business degree many years ago, but I was always a pretty terrible student. I had terrible grades. I barely graduated, probably, like with an embarrassing GPA, because I'm just not particularly great in academic settings. But I was thinking about another academic setting, and especially an MFA, because it's less academic and more sort of about the art, right? MFA, art. I was really thinking about sort of graduate school in that realm. And I was talking to him and pitching this off of him. And, at some point he said, hey, you got to talk to my friend Bill Barretta. Because he's a very accomplished actor and he's going to probably have some ideas about this. So he put me in touch. We had a long Zoom call, multiple Zoom calls, in fact, but our first Zoom call was a good one in which, we just kind of got to know each other and I just kind of pitched my thoughts on MFA. And, Bill was really the first one to say, dude, why an MFA? I mean, okay, but why don't you look at conservatory? And that's when he told me about the Neighborhood Playhouse, which is a very storied, theater conservatory in New York City on East 51st Street, in fact, in Midtown, where Sanford Meisner taught for many, many years. I think I may get this wrong, but I think even something like 40 years he taught there for. So, that was kind of my first introduction to Neighborhood Playhouse. I did go out. I did audition for Neighborhood Playhouse. I auditioned for a number of other conservatories and, in fact, a number of MFA programs as well. And that process took about a year or so. It was about a year of applying and auditioning and callbacks and then thinking and kind of figuring out what I would do. I did get into a number of MFA programs, I'm very happy to say. Did also get into Neighborhood Playhouse. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I actually chose Neighborhood Playhouse. So I will be attending Neighborhood Playhouse fall of this year. When I'm recording this is August. And I will be attending first week of Neighborhood Playhouse classes at the conservatory. Actually begins September 6th, actually September 9th specifically. So I'll be up there, and it's really all thanks to Bill, for kind of turning my attention to it and thinking about conservatory as, sort of an option that I hadn't up to that point really been thinking about. So that's the story. Since then, Bill and I have become closer and closer. We exchange jokes and shit all the time as we've been leading up to this. And so it was not too long ago that I asked him to be on my podcast, and he said, fuck yeah. And so he's here, and, I'm really proud and excited to have known Bill and have been able to spend some time with Bill and learn from him. And I hope you all get that opportunity too here in this interview, because we do go pretty deep into sort of his background, the background of the Muppets, how the Muppets are pitched, how shows are pitched today in streaming. There's some really, really great pieces to lift from this one. So I hope you too get a chance to learn from Bill as I have. And so with that, we're going to roll the tape on Bill. Stick with us.
If you're an actor serious about your craft, then you know you're serious about improving your read, your presentation, and your on-camera delivery. And there's no faster way to sharpen your skills than with detailed, collaborative feedback from your fellow actors, directors, casting directors, coaches, and other creative professionals in the industry. So how do you get in front of the people you need to impress? With Show Coach. Available for Apple and Android, this exciting app gives you a stage to showcase your work, including self-tapes, reels, and monologues, specifically to solicit feedback from the professionals who can hire you. And for a limited time, Show Coach is absolutely free to use. Industry professionals can apply to become a coach and earn money for critiquing student posts. Download the app as a student or coach from your mobile app store or visit showcoach.app to learn more. That's showcoach.app. Show Coach, artists encouraging greatness.
All right, please help me welcome my next guest, who I'm so excited about, and I know you will be as well, Bill Barretta. That's right. Yep, there he is, ladies and gentlemen. Bill has been with the Muppets for over 30 years, having begun his career with the Jim Henson Company in 1991. He has the honor of having created Pepe the King Prawn and has also voiced many Jim Henson iconic and beloved characters, including the Swedish Chef and Dr. Teeth. And over the last 30 years, Barretta has been involved as director, writer, executive producer, coordinator for many Muppets projects, many of which I'd love to talk about, including the most recent one, Muppets Mayhem for Disney+, which won him an Emmy Award. Congratulations, Bill. That's right.
All right.
And welcome,
man, right on.
welcome to Big Break Pod. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. I mean, I don't like you very much, but I'm hoping this goes well.
Yeah, no, me too. Your publicist told me your feelings about me, that I am far too smart and far too handsome for you to keep up with, I believe were the words. So I totally understand. I'm gonna slow it down and really put the handsomeness aside, and I'm gonna really bring it way down. So hopefully this goes really well.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't have a publicist, but you know, whatever you say.
So, my friend, you need a publicist. Maybe you don't. I don't know. What does a publicist do? Let's start there. Do publicists matter? I don't know if there's any publicists who actually listen to this account. Do publicists matter?
Do publicists matter? Yes, I think they do. I don't have one, but yeah, I think they're huge, especially when you're a working actor and you've made a movie or whatever you're doing.
You need to get it out there and get people to watch it.
They get you out there. They let people know who you are and make you popular and all that good stuff without you having to toot your own horn.
That's beautiful.
You know?
Yeah, that's great. I hope I don't get canceled by all the publicists of the world. Publicists of the world, please do not unite against me. I didn't know until Bill told me. So, my friend, let's talk. Let's get into it. First and foremost, you are an alumni of the Neighborhood Playhouse. This actually wasn't on my agenda, but I'd love to start talking there, because I will reveal, I guess, in this better place now than never or ever, right? I should reveal that I am attending the Neighborhood Playhouse this fall. Many thanks to you for actually turning me on to that conservatory, because I had been looking at a lot of conservatories and MFA programs, but ultimately after I went through all of the auditions and everything, and at the end of the day, Neighborhood Playhouse was right for me. So I'd love to hear, why was Neighborhood Playhouse right for you? What really attracted you there, and what'd you come out of it with? Or talk about Neighborhood Playhouse for anything else you would like to talk about. I'm just really curious kind of what you think about the school and how you came out of it.
Yeah, well, you know, I was I grew up in Pennsylvania, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I lived in the city in Philadelphia, and I started taking acting classes from a great acting teacher by the name of Sidney Kay. And Sidney was a student teacher for Sanford Meisner. Sid went to the Neighborhood Playhouse, was kind of a star pupil there, Actually took later the Meisner technique to RADA in London and introduced the Meisner technique to the Royal Academy there.
Hmm.
But he was a student teacher of Sanford Meisner, and so I spent about 2 years with Sid. And at one point, he said, "You know, you should go to the Playhouse." And I was like, "Hmm." Yeah, I was in my late 20s, mid 20s, and I thought, well, that's okay. But am I going to visit this? He said, no. One thing is Sandy's still there,
Hmm.
and I think you would really benefit from being in front of him and getting a sense of him and the experience there, and then also being doing it all day long,
Hmm.
right? It isn't just for a few hours, 2 nights a week kind of thing. You're
Hmm.
in it. You're doing your acting, your voice, your dance, your all of these things, movement, all of these things that help you grow,
Hmm.
obviously, as an actor. And so I went and I auditioned, and fortunately, I got in.
Hmm.
And this was 1988. Sandy was around, I think, 88 at that time, and uh, I loved it. The other teachers, great teachers, Richard Pinter, Ron Stetson, these other great teachers that were there that taught most of our classes. But then we would have Sandy, once a week kind of thing. And it was unbelievable. I mean, to see this guy. So I don't know how much you know about Sandy,
read
but
read his book, so learned
oh,
quite a
right.
bit
Of
about that.
course.
So yes, yes,
Of course you did.
yeah.
Right. But in person, so he was 88. He had cataracts in both eyes, so he
Right.
didn't see well,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
He had a hole in his throat from
Hmm.
cancer surgery.
Hmm.
So when he spoke, he would burp,
That's
right? He
right.
taught himself how to speak and
To get it
burp.
out, and then the mic would have to
Uh,
be adjusted, and the speakers have to be adjusted every now and then. Battery would
yeah,
die. All these things would happen, right?
yeah, he wore a little microphone over here so that we could hear him, and he would, and he would speak, it's a play, play,
That's
he'd
right.
burp it out.
Yeah.
And he was hit by a truck, so he walked with a cane. He had elephantitis in his left hand.
Oh my
So this guy, he was a mess.
God. Yes, beat, man,
And
beat
he would
down.
sit on the edge of his desk facing the class, right? If you're the class, you're facing the class. We're
Uh,
all over here.
uh,
And the room was kind of to the left where there was a couch and a chair and a table, things for to play a scene.
mhm.
And we would get up and do our scenes or improvisations, and he would sit there and he wouldn't watch it. He would just listen. His ears still worked
Interesting.
really well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so he would critique it based on whether he thought it was bullshit or not,
Wow,
right?
that's
He
incredible.
could hear it.
Yeah.
He'd go, bullshit. He'd call it out. uh, but it was fascinating to watch him, and so I just loved it. It was just amazing. And being in New York,
Yeah.
and meeting these amazing friends who I just this year we pulled together a Zoom after 30 years,
Hmm.
30 more, 34, I think. Um, some of us got together, like 15 of us. It was amazing to see everybody and hear what they're all doing. And uh, so I loved it. And I took away probably, the most
Everything.
important
Yeah.
lesson, which was about listening,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
really, really listening. And that's been huge in everything I do.
That's awesome. By the way, that desk is still there. And I know that because I visited the neighborhood playhouse last year and we walked into the
Oh,
room
yeah.
and the person who was giving me the tour said, by the way, that's Sandy's desk. It's still here. And by
Yeah.
God, it's still there. And it's still next to the bed, I think, or like in front of the bed that's there, right? Because not to give away too many secrets here for those who might be going to the neighborhood playhouse or what have you, but the bed is sort of where a lot of the scenes happen because as I understand it, that's the most intimate place in a person's life is their bed and their room. So things would happen there. Does the bed ring a bell? Was the bed a concept when you were there? I know you said couch, so maybe kind of the same sort of a concept.
Yeah, I think it just depended on what kind of scene you were doing,
Mhm.
and I don't know if I didn't really do a lot of, not that I recall maybe, but any like real intimately, sexual or even just cuddly types of
Well,
info.
and
Not that
also
I
just like
remember.
also just maybe I didn't portray this right. Also just like scenes of like when I say intimate, I guess I mean like
I know
intimate
what you mean.
conflict, like spousal conflict, right? You know,
Right, right.
the
Yeah.
spouse walks in
Yeah.
after a long day and like she's not listening again and you've got something important. Like so that was anyway, I got all this from the book, I should say
No, no,
also.
but I suppose that's true. I just never thought of it that way. Just everywhere seems to be intimate to me when you're at home, right? If you're in the kitchen or you're, wherever the scene's taking place between two people, I guess that's intimate. But I get what
That's
you're
right.
saying. Yes, of course, people would use that, I guess, to feel like you're in a place where it's private.
That's
Yeah,
right.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And would that have been pretty close to when Sandy, so you said 88. It must not have been many
Yeah.
more years before Sandy would have ultimately passed on and he would have stopped teaching. But I
Yeah.
understand he taught right up until really almost like the end days, if I understand it correctly. I mean, really almost up to the end of his life, he
Yeah, I
was
think
teaching.
so. I was there from 88 to 90, and then he, I think, lived mostly on the island that they had a house, I believe,
Hmm.
he and Jimmy. And so they, I think he taught in LA, maybe. I don't know if he kept teaching in New York, maybe. You know what? I honestly, I'm not sure. But
Be
yeah, it
interesting
wasn't,
to,
I think maybe he was 92 when he passed,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
I'm not
I
sure. Not
I
sure.
I do remember from the book also that he lived in an apartment whenever the book came out. So I think the book was, I don't know what year it was, but it sounds like it was earlier than 88. And he must have
Mm.
been and the bus accident that was in New York City, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And he was,
you're telling me you can live in New York City your entire life and still get hit by a bus at the end of your life. That's what you're telling me. I am
I guess.
I am ultimately
Yeah.
very nervous about that. I'm going to watch for every bus I see crossing every street.
Oh, for
But
sure. He would
but
walk into class with his cane, and I was usually sitting kind of, near the frontish thing. And he would go, "Here, hold that." And he'd throw me his cane, and I would be the holder of his cane. And I think twice maybe I walked with him home because he didn't live that far, and he would walk. Uh, so yeah, it was cool. It was
there's a
cool.
picture of you, I believe, holding his cane, if I understand correctly. I
Oh,
think I've seen the picture of you actually holding his cane. So
that's
you're
true.
not kidding that he would walk in and casually toss his cane at you with zero
Yeah, hold that.
consideration whether or not you're interested in being his cane holder, it sounds like.
Yeah, hold that. Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah.
So, what do you think? So interesting. So, after all that happened, 1991 with the ABC television show Dinosaurs with the Jim Henson Company, I understand. What do you think drew you as an actor to that kind of work? Do you think it's kind of the inner child in all of us, perhaps that might have attracted you, or is that like was that like the job that was available at the time? So you're like, all right, I'm gonna go do this job. How did you kind of find yourself in sort of puppeteering and kind of the business, I would say, or at least the entertainment side of entertaining children? I'm really curious if that kind of started early and kind of has carried on this whole time. And maybe not so
Well,
much
let's
children,
see.
but I guess just in Muppetry, if that's a word, and sort of
Yeah.
the
Well,
family entertainment.
Dinosaurs wasn't really a Muppet-like project, right? It was a Disney Henson collaboration, and it came out of the success of the Ninja Turtle film,
Hmm.
right? That was with animatronic heads and suit performers, people inside of these characters, and working in conjunction with a puppeteer who's operating all the facial manipulations.
Got it.
So that was this was the next generation going even bigger, right? And so I was, I'd moved from New York. Jim had just passed in 90.
Hmm.
Um, Brian Henson and I kind of reconnected on a little more deeper level again. I was at the memorial and we kind of reconnected. We had been friends. We met when we were 17 at a place called Sesame Place,
Hmm.
a Sesame Street themed amusement park.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so we kept in touch over the years. And yeah, so I moved out to California and Brian became the CEO of the Jim Henson Company
Hmm.
at 25. We were 25 years old.
Wow.
And and so he came out to visit and we got together and he said, I have this I'm working on this new show. And he said, I've seen you do Jackie Gleason before, and this character is like Jackie Gleason. Would you be into being coming auditioning? I said, okay, what are you kidding? I was living in Long Beach, which is, like 40 minutes south of LA, um, working as a waiter. I was in a construction apprentice, just trying to work. And then I would try and get into town. And how am I going to audition? How am I going to be an actor? That was my goal, me as an actor, right?
Hmm.
And so uh, I said, "What do you mean?" Yeah, of course. What do you what Well, it's this thing. You'd be in a suit, and I don't know if you'd be into. I was like, "What do you?" Yes, please. I would love to. I don't care. I'll pull cables, whatever it is. I don't care. I would love to just be around it, even if I don't get the job.
Uh-huh.
And so he said, "Okay, well, I'll set it up, and you'll come and audition." So I hear it's a show about dinosaurs, right? And I'm thinking, okay, I've been at the neighborhood playhouse. Everything is about interpreting dialogue through your behavior. That's the phrase, right?
Hmm.
Interpreting dialogue through your behavior. Well, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm not actually saying the words because someone else is operating the head, and they're doing the production track for the voice and the facial manipulations. I'm the behavior. This is what I do. Hey, Meisner, this is what I do. you know. And so I shaved my head because I thought I'd look more like a Tyrannosaurus Rex if I had like a shaved head, and I went in and
Wait, and you're
I
in a
kind of
costume, right? Like your head doesn't show anyway, right? Or
say it again.
your head doesn't show anyway because you're in a costume, right?
No, no, yeah, absolutely, yeah, no, but it was about me feeling like I was a dinosaur and being this character
Brilliant.
because somebody would. No, actually, you know what? I can't remember if I did the dialogue. I think I did. I think I did the dialogue as well during the audition.
Uh-huh.
And so what I found out later was the producer of the show, Michael Jacobs, the co-creator of the show, uh, he chose me based on my behavior. He turned
Uh-huh.
the sound off and he said, that's the guy we need because he's doing this Ralph Cramden stuff.
That's great.
Um, and so really it was about a job. It
Yeah.
was about me working, getting my foot in the door professionally somehow, you know. How bad could it be? Disney and Henson get together and do the first big project.
Amazing.
Um, so I get to be Earl Sinclair, I get to be inside this suit, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but the
Like,
best
do you like
experience.
physically hard? Like it was physically the hardest thing you've ever done?
Oh my God, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh God, it was like 100 pounds on me,
Wow.
the head was 20 some pounds alone. Even though I had supports and everything, it was huge. He was like 6, almost 7 feet tall,
Mm-hmm.
4.5 feet around.
Mm-hmm.
It was this, he doesn't, if you watch it, he walks like this because he's heavy as hell.
Yeah.
Um, and it was amazing. It was really an amazing lesson. And also, what was really interesting was, and a lot of us had to do this, but the only way I could see was when he was talking because my eyes were in his mouth,
Got it.
right?
Got it. Yep.
So when Earl spoke, it's almost like if you were to blink a lot as you're doing
It's like an
things.
old like picture film or something.
Yeah, yeah. And so I would rehearse. We rehearse without the heads on. We have the bodies, but I would rehearse with my eyes closed so that, I could remember where things are to pick up if I have to or whatever, where my eye lines are without having to worry about seeing a lot of it, you
Yeah,
know.
right. That's awesome.
Um,
And that
but
helped
yeah,
when the cameras came on, I'm sure.
oh, for sure. And then, if you watch the show and you see Earl cross the room,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If he's crossing, you always see him go, ah, like sigh, so that I could see the next 10 feet ahead of me. The puppeteer would make him sigh, and then I would keep going.
It's incredible.
It was amazing. It was amazing. The people I met the Muppet performers, Dave Goles, who does Gonzo, and Kevin Clash, who's Elmo, Steve Whitmire, who became Kermit the Frog, and Rizzo, and all these amazing performers, plus these new performers that have worked with Henson more in a supporting aspect, were now taking on these other roles, and people that worked in the creature shop in London, and all these amazing performers in the cast, the crew, and it was phenomenal. It was unbelievable. We did it for 4 years, you know.
It's awesome.
It was wild.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You've raised a question for me, which is that I think Jurassic Park came out in 1994-ish, 1994, 1995. And when it did, it was all digitized, right? It's sort of like, it's like the first film to come out where it digitized something that up to that point had been done with puppets. And so in 1991, you were really kind of just starting to get into that world. But of course, puppeteering had been an art form for hundreds of years probably, right? And so, but like in the entertainment world as well, I don't know much before 1991 but I'm sure there was like puppet shows and stuff. Here's my question. My curiosity stems from this idea that in 1994, Jurassic Park came out and it changed the way movies are made, and in the sense that puppets were no longer needed, or animatronics were no longer needed, because these guys proved you could do it on a computer. I wonder if you guys were thinking about that at all at that time. Did that ever occur? That this digitalization of these characters could sort of put puppeteering at peril in some regards. Were you guys thinking about that at all? Like, did you guys look at that and go, holy shit, that's incredible? We used to do that with animatronics, but now it gets done with digital. I'm just curious. I'm curious if that was ever kind of like a thought, or if that was ever a thing.
I mean, I'm sure we thought about it. The thing is, I don't think it was, I don't think it was in 1995 it became digital world. There was hybrid, right? There were puppets that were enhanced with CG, right? So a lot of the first Jurassic Park were huge hand built, like this is it Stegosaurus, the one that's lying down, like the face. That's
right.
Real,
That's right. That was totally it. That's right. That was animatronic. That was the thing with the big shield on its head. Yeah, that's right. And they play with the dong and all that.
Stegosaurus, I think it is. But the big shots of them running right through the across these big open land, obviously all digitized. But it was a more gradual thing, and I think Henson was trying to find their way into that as well. And same with, I think everybody thought, okay, this is interesting. Jim, the stories that I've been told, and I didn't really get to spend a lot of time or any time working with Jim, but, he would have been totally into this stuff and the technology, and how do we create the hybrid? How do we digitize? I mean, if you look at the Henson Company now, they have digitized puppeteering. It's done. It's the same process. It's the mechanisms much improved now, but the same kind of mechanisms and approach they used for the animatronic heads, but it goes directly into the computer, and they're motion capture people and digitized, faces and characters. So it all became integrated, and I think everybody found that, yes, of course, they're headed that way, but I still love the puppet, the real,
the textile connection. Right? The textile, the art of having created it. Yeah. I find that fascinating. And I think I just find that concept fascinating, especially that Jim would have been somebody who would have leaned into that and looked forward to that.
Created, in my mind, there's a difference between what I created and the first kind of character I did.
I understand. Sure. Versus voices versus character. Did the voicing of characters come before creating a character? Like, would you have had to sort of establish yourself in that world for a while before you got the chance to create a character?
With Henson, you don't really voice a character. It's all in one, right? So if you're doing a character, you're manipulating the puppet as well as doing the voice, which is part of the character. Right?
I see.
So and Frank Oz would say the voice is 10%, right? But
got it.
Character as an actor, you understand, right? Where the voice comes as you're building the character and you're learning who it is and figuring out what it is and what looks right with that puppet, what feels, what fits.
That's right.
So that kind of comes after. My kind of first character that I got to perform was something that was already written. So I didn't create it. It was for I think something called Muppet Classic Theater, which was a bunch of fairy tales that featured the classic characters, Kermit and Miss Piggy and Gonzo. and I did. It was the elves and the shoemaker, that fairy tale, but the elves were Elvises, and so I did the lead elf in that. That was kind of my first character that I got to do.
That's great. And all the
Yeah,
and all that good stuff, I'm sure, was thrown in there.
well, you know, you're just kind of talking like this, you know, and mercy and all that stuff. Uh, and then after that, they asked me to come and be a part of Muppet Treasure Island. Was really was that my next big thing? Yeah, I think. And that was
Let me check with your publicist. Hold on one second. Yes,
oh yeah,
I
would you
believe
please?
Treasure Island was.
Which was a character that I got to develop a little more, even though there was an idea for him and what he should be. He didn't have a lot of dialogue, and through improvisation and playing around with Tim Curry and Kevin Clash and all the and Brian, I found this character, Clueless Morgan, who was this really stupid goat. He was one of Long John Silver's pirates, you know. And and so that I felt like I kind of I helped create that guy a little more.
Mhm.
And then we did a show called Animal Show where I just did a flood of different characters because it was a talk show.
Mhm.
And so they would say, well, okay, this one is an orangutan and he's here, you got to do, and I would try and think of something to do with that, but it
Mhm.
wasn't creating. I'd say sorry to answer your question. The first character I feel like I actually created was a character and is a guy named Johnny Fiama.
Mhm.
And Johnny Fiama is a character that I used to do as myself.
Mhm.
So my brother and I would do the Fiama brothers. We were messing around. We shot like some video of them. We did a thing called The Last Waltz, which is like a mini documentary about these two brothers that perform, you know, and they're interviewed and all that stuff. But Johnny Fiama to me was like you know, a guy who was always on the peripheral of the big names, right? So Sinatra, Tony Bennett. He was like the guy that was always like at the back nodding his head, you know.
That opens
And
the opener that people may or may not remember
not
opener.
even opens.
Not even opener. Like host.
No. Opens in his living room, you know.
Yeah.
He's kind of like Rupert Pupkin, if you remember The King of Comedy. Do you know that movie, The King of Comedy?
Oh no.
Okay, you got to see The King of Comedy.
Okay.
Right? Robert De Niro. It's a Scorsese film. Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis, Sandra Bernhardt, I think is yes. Anyway, great movie. Got to see it. Anyway, this character to me was a guy who rehearsed in his backyard and never had the guts to really go for it.
Okay,
right?
got it. Like a Philly lounge singer who like wants to be.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, like he still lives at home with his mother.
Yeah, right.
You know, he has a girlfriend, but he's afraid to get, you know, committed. And so, anyway, after Treasure Island, we were doing a workshop because they wanted to do a new Muppet Show series.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where I started to throw out some of my characters that I'd been playing around with. And I think Johnny was the first one that people felt like, yeah, that could be something.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically built a new puppet that he's like a cross between me and Robert De Niro from Casino. And Brian Henson and I tend to do characters together in the Muppet kind of world. A lot of the performers tend to team up. So you had Jim and Frank Oz, right? And Dave Goelz and Steve Whitmire, Jerry Nelson and Richard Hunt. And so Brian and I tended to go together.
Mm-hmm.
And he created this monkey character who was like his right-hand man, valet, bodyguard.
Brilliant.
And so Sal kept Johnny up on a pedestal, you know. So he would always announce him coming, Johnny Fiama coming true, you know. And so I'd say that's my first character. Sorry, that took a really long time to get to, but that was really,
that's
say my
great.
first
I mean,
character.
So this has to happen. I'm interested in the creative process of where it all came from. It must have come from, obviously, your hometown in Philly. Did you know some Johnny Fiamos at some point? Did you like meet a Johnny Fiamo at some point? I mean, is that where this stuff comes from? All comedy comes from a place of truth, does it not in some ways?
Yeah, I think so. I think it should be rooted in reality in some way. The funniest stuff to me is the stuff that's rooted in reality. Um, but Johnny for me came from he's a combination of my father and my grandfather.
I see.
Um, and so that's they both were very entertaining people, but did what they were supposed to do, right? My father wanted to be a baseball player, but well, I won't go into it. Got sick, but couldn't play. Was going to be on the Phillies, but anyway, loved to sing,
Hmm.
right? And he loved that, and didn't get a chance to really do that. Created a family, and that's what you were supposed to do back then, right?
Yep.
And same with my grandfather. My grandfather, such a beautiful heart, right? Loves
Hmm.
his family. Not the most educated guy in the world,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Only got to a certain level and went into the family business and blah blah. So Johnny is that combination of, he's going to be, he knows how he sings in the car,
Yeah,
all day
that's right. But
long.
only in the car. Only in the car.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, and so yeah, so it came from my life, really.
That's so cool. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
then you must have at some point met a gigantic walking, talking king prawn, right? Because everything comes from truth and reality. You must have been walking down the street one day and ran into a giant walking king prawn and said, "Oh my God, what a great idea
Well,
for a
no,
character."
I fell in love with a girl who was born in Madrid, Spain.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Her mother brought her here when she was, I think, 2. Her father is American. Um, and her aunt, who was from Madrid, Spain, came to visit
Uh-huh.
after we were dating for a while. And actually, we went to do Treasure Island, and she came to visit
Oh,
in
cool.
England.
Hmm.
And she would always speak in statements, okay, right? So her name was Maria Teresa, and she would say, "Come on, Billy, we go to the store, okay?" I say, "Okay," you know.
Like no
And you're
syllables.
wearing a
No syllables at all,
yeah,
just
no questions,
no
always kind of just
questions.
statements, right? So it was always, "You're wearing a black shirt, Billy, okay, okay." Uh, and so he's based on her. He's based on because she was a very mischievous lady, very funny. Uh, actually, this funny story. I was describing this character because we were talking about what he might be, and I said, my aunt, she's a little shellfish. And I said shellfish instead of selfish. And a guy named Kirk Thatcher, brilliant writer, director, and designer from Muppets, he said, "Wait, what? What? What did you say? Maybe it's a crab or a lobster or a shrimp." And I said, "Oh, maybe it's a king prawn because he's got a thing about his size." Uh, and so we developed the character, but it was based again on a person that I just watched and took in and was around, and I just tried to find a funny way of using that.
Brilliant. Amazing. Comedy gold here. And
Oh, can I tell you one little thing about her real quick?
please do. I'm all ears.
Sorry, last bit. So in my wife's family, there are 3, I believe it's 3, maybe 4, but I think it's 3, Maria Teresas, right? There's
Mhm.
3, either cousins or aunts, Maria Teresas. And when I went to Spain, the way they knew they were talking about her aunt, Maria Teresa, the one who's based on Pepe, is they called her Maria Teresa, okay. Because even they acknowledged that was her thing, that was her pattern, yeah, I just
Was
thought that was
everything ended with
hysterical.
okay? That's why everything ends with okay at the end.
Yeah. Maria Teresa, okay. Yeah.
Man, that's fantastic. That's great. So now moving forward,
Yeah.
yeah, now moving forward, so the Muppets Mayhem came out. That's right.
Wow.
There's the very flash of you. That was a nice flash.
Oh, yeah.
The nice
Yeah.
Flash character. Yeah, so moving forward, so Muppets Mayhem came out, I believe in 2023, if that's correct.
Sounds right.
Yeah,
Yes, the beginning of
2023.
2023.
And so Muppets Mayhem came out in 2023, a year ago. That is now, well over 30 years that you've been involved in puppets and many Muppets and many years before that. I'm curious, what do you think explains the longevity of the Muppets, right? So there's been Muppets created in all sorts of various fashions and ideas over the years. Like I love that, most recently the 2015 ABC series it was the Muppets had, I think it was Miss Piggy that had a TV show, right? So it was like a late night TV show, and like that's a whole concept. Muppets Mayhem comeback album for Dr. Teeth, right, and his band. That's a concept. What do you think that keeps bringing the Muppets back? Is it just that these ideas are just that new ideas are created where the Muppets can live in that world? Do you think that there's just a lasting affinity for the Muppets themselves for people of certain generations? I mean, what keeps bringing the Muppets back and keeps them so interesting and keeps audiences tuning in? If you had to take a stab at guessing for that, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I guess it's a combination of those things that you just mentioned, which are ideas or concepts to renew interest, right? If it's something that feels a little more current, or doing parodies of things has been a good thing. When they did Muppet Treasure Island and Christmas Carol, that was kind of a new thing, that they're playing characters, right? That was a new restart in a way, or at least a new fun way of getting interested in them again. But I don't know, I think the bigger, broader appeal is probably and I try to keep this idea and keep moving in this direction, because I don't think you can do it without it, which is, I think what Jim originally set up in the beginning was he surrounded himself with different people, right? Different, whether they got along or not. This person, you may go, oh, that person's they're not going to get along. I think that was okay, right? He loved embracing the idea of celebrating differences, right? And so I think the Muppets are those kinds of characters. I think people relate to them because they're a group of characters that tolerate and love each other, as crazy or awful or arrogant or whatever it is. I think people get that, and I think they look forward to seeing how these characters are going to mix it up this time, or get along or not what's going to happen. Oh, that, Gonzo, I'm like Gonzo, the people relate to them because they're different. And I guess I think that's it. I think it's because we embrace the idea that it's good to be different. You don't have to fit into an idea or a bubble, or you're all supposed to be okay. I don't know. Does that answer the question in some way? I don't know.
It does. I think also just the idea of like putting out these projects that kind of put the Muppets in new scenarios that may be relevant or culturally relevant, right? I mean, I'm thinking of like the Bohemian Rhapsody, music video that was done, I think in 2010, something like that. That was kind of a resurgence moment for the Muppets to come back after a very long time. And I think that may have even led into sort of the decision to greenlight maybe some of the projects that came after that as well. So these characters,
it's interesting because I mean, there's always been things like that, right? There's always new stuff. But I think what it shits on are the shoulders of these characters and how people relate to them. I think you can always have something new and you can get into the what's hip now, but that only lasts for so long. So if it's the longevity you're asking about, I think it has to do with the characters and the fact that people relate to them because they are a bunch of oddballs who get along.
That makes sense. In other words, Kermit will always have his girlfriend, Miss Piggy, who, is always on his ass, whatever's going on. And, he's always trying to find some new, whether it's running his late night talk show or what have you, he's always got that girlfriend that's right there that's kind of nitpicking him, right? I mean, I guess that's the concept, is that the characters don't change. Who they are doesn't change. Just the scenarios that they're in.
Yeah, I think they change and grow because, they can have a falling out and you're wondering, or either you're cheering for them to get back together or not, right? Kermit's, I think, a guy who, tends to try to control the chaos.
Right.
We know people like that, right? who try to control the chaos, and people want to see how's it going to do this time,
Yeah.
Or Miss Piggy, right? Miss Piggy's all about very selfish and all about herself, and when are you going to get to hear her apologize?
Right.
Maybe never,
Right.
So yeah, I think it's about the characters, even though they do have stereotypes of themselves.
Mhm.
I think it's fun to see them grow and change within these new scenarios that we put them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. And Rowlf the dog just runs his bar and just has a good old time while everybody else is fighting and arguing and beating each other up, I guess.
Yeah, I think, that was kind of fun. Rowlf became the what do you call it? When somebody goes in and needs a little sounding board, right?
Yeah. He's like the therapist almost. He's kind of like
Yeah,
de
he's kind of
facto
like
therapist.
two big ears, and then
Yeah.
uses them to listen. It's all about listening to other people's problems, and he may not have any answers, but he'll certainly listen and empathize.
Do you know when
Yeah.
the first, and also Dr. Teeth, who I love, and I love the band Muppets Mayhem, was hilarious because I think it focuses on the band in a way that maybe that has or hasn't happened before. You'll have to forgive me of my Muppets knowledge and history, but maybe Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem have not sort of had that kind of a focus or a big stage that they got in Muppets Mayhem. Was there anything in particular that like drew you to that concept of having, I believe that you were a co-writer or writer, a co-creator on Muppets Mayhem, anything in particular that kind of drew you to this concept of like, let's do a reunion tour show around, Dr. Teeth and his band of mayhem-inducing band members, right? That just create the kind of chaos you're talking about everywhere they go. Is there anything in particular that kind of drew you to that being the storyline for Muppets Mayhem, or that being the show that you wanted to see happen?
Well, before the series, they functioned more as a group, right? They were used as punchlines or, a collective group of thought, of thinking, right? So they all seemed to kind of be together, and they agreed on things mostly, and right, they didn't really have individual personalities as much as I think we'd always wanted them to have. Even though the performers have backstories to them, we've never really showcased them as individuals or pairs very much. So occasionally, Floyd and Janice, boyfriend, girlfriend, use that, but they tended to be more of a group, an ensemble that were used for gags or moments or, that kind of thing. And so when we did a concert called Outside Lands in 2016, and it was at the Golden Gate Park, and it was crazy. I mean, we did 25 minute set, and they said 20 to 30,000 people ended up on the lawn watching this show. It's crazy. And other bands there, right? So there was like the festival going on, but people came.
That's hilarious.
And was what. And you think about it, even though we had live mics so we could interact throughout the set, the music was all pre-recorded, right? So people are out there dancing, and hitting balls around, and they're all having a big party, and the weeds flowing across the field, It was a blast. And I just thought, wow, they showed up for that, So I thought, what if the Mayhem went on tour? We did a series about them going on tour. And I pitched it back then, and we were talking about it, but it didn't really catch. I mean, the idea, everybody loved the idea, but it didn't really make any headway. And then in, I guess, 2018, we had a shift in leadership with the Muppet Studios. And I went in and I pitched it again. And it just so happened that this other brilliant pair of guys, Adam Goldberg and Jeff Yorks, Adam F. Goldberg, I should say, created the show The Goldbergs. And he was quite the golden boy at ABC. And he and Jeff had this idea of doing a show about the Electric Mayhem Band. And so they went and pitched. And fortunately, the people that are running the Muppet Studios put us together and said, you guys should get together and let's see what, you want to come up with. And so we did. And we went more with their idea, which was to create an album. right? That the band, after all these years, never made an album, right? They always toured, played places, but they've never done an album. And they were contracted to do one, but they forgot, they lost track of whatever it was.
Right.
And they just
It's
never
at the back
did
of
it.
it's like the
And
contract's in the
so-
back of the RV bus somewhere underneath, all the speakers.
Yeah,
and
the
stuff.
money's underneath, and like they got a down the deposit, but they don't know what happened to it.
Right.
So we thought, okay, how great, let's start setting that up. There's a record company, and this woman, this character was a puppet named Penny. She's the one who wanted to make this album with them years ago, and they never fulfilled it. And now we have this human actress who's playing this other character who works there, who learns about they have this contract, and she's like, oh my gosh, we should get that. And so we just tried to build the pieces and bring it together. So it was about the band for the first time making an album. And through that journey, we thought, what a great opportunity to start learning more about them.
Got it.
Yeah, as individuals and a band together.
That's very cool. So that would have been pitched and greenlit before even a pilot was written. I mean, to understand kind of the mechanics and logistics behind it, could that have been pitched and accepted even before a pilot was written? Would that have been possible? I mean, is that a thing? Does that happen?
Well, it was definitely pitched and sold before the pilot, because we pitched what it was about, and we pitched what the season would be like, and all the kind of pieces of the puzzle that we had meetings with Disney Plus and the Muppet Studios, Muppet Studio, making sure that everybody was in sync and was happy with where it was going. So it was a very collaborative kind of approach. Everybody got on board and thought, this is fun. Yeah, this feels good. And it just got better and better as people got involved. And, oh, we should do, ABC signatures here. And they're going, oh, what if we do that? Oh, yeah, hey, that's cool. Let's bring. So everybody kind of started to make this thing happen.
I see.
Which was great.
Yeah.
And then we wrote the pilot and we wrote the other episodes. And but yeah, it was greenlit. The pitch was greenlit.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, it's a hilarious season. I have a picture of my little baby girl on the floor in her diapers watching it like this. It's a great picture. I'll have to send it your way. So awesome. Congratulations on the show, and I'm looking forward to.
Unfortunately, I had to work with your brother. Again.
Yeah. He keeps asking to come back on the Ask Your Producer segment. He keeps texting me. He actually texted me while we were talking. He said, "Are you with Bill?" I haven't texted him back. I don't know what to tell him. I don't know. It's a little awkward.
Doesn't stop. He just doesn't stop.
It's getting
me. Hi, Chris Eber here. Hi.
Yeah, it's getting clingy. Do you know that his email has his name? I mean, can you get any more? Anyway, he's somebody's got to tell that guy to we'll call you back, pal. I'll give you.
And he's not even good at what he does. You know what I mean? Like if he was good at it.
Yeah.
You might go, okay, I can put up with this attitude.
Yeah.
But he's not even good.
Yeah. I know.
I
know. He's not invited back for Christmas. He's not invited for Christmas this year. My mom said he's not. No, I'm kidding. Of course he's invited. We don't actually want him there, but of course he's invited. Yes, he's invited.
He's invited.
He's always invited. I mean, but
it's
just when he shows up. Anyway. So I'm curious, as kind of a way to kind of sign off here, and start to wind it down. Tell me a little bit about kind of, if you can, what are you working on? And I'm always really curious about asking any guests in the show. I kind of ask with streaming the way that it is, and with things changing the way that are, obviously you've been able to work in the streaming world, but streaming is sort of upending a lot of things for lots of actors and lots of creators, as you know. And I'm just curious, sort of, what are you working on? If that's something that you can talk about. If it's not, I'm really curious to sort of what your ideas are for streaming going forward, like how we operate in this new world of streaming, and sort of how you're thinking about it and how you're looking at it. Has it changed the way you pitch? Has it changed the way you write and produce and create projects? And so kind of curious to one or either one of those topics that you feel like is worthwhile to talk about.
I'm just curious. So when you ask this
question to other guests, do you usually show both tattoos that way?
Yeah, I do. It's a power move, Bill. It's a power move.
I'm just wondering, is that always kind of the thing when you're asking this question?
Yeah, it's a power move, actually, is what it is. For those who are listening to this on the podcast and not actually seeing this, I went into a lounge position with my feet forward and my arms up, and he astutely pointed out that I have tattoos all over my arms. Yes, it's a power move designed to intimidate you, Bill. Is what
Got it. All right. Okay, got it.
No, this is my
me.
late day third interview comfy position is what this is. This is me getting my
It's all
comfy
good.
position.
I'm teasing. So, well, what's the question? Oh, yeah. So, what am I working on? Well, I can't really go into detail on things, unfortunately, so I won't bore you with that. But there are things that are puppet related and not puppet related. There's one thing that I've had, it's a passion project of mine that I've had for 20 years. Still, I won't give up on it until something happens with it. I've developed with a partner of mine, a series version, a film version, a musical version.
Wow.
At some point that will happen. I can tell you it's about Louis Prima. If any of your fans out there know who Louis Prima is, it's about him and his drummer, a guy named Jimmy Vincent. Just a great story about these two guys from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Anyway, so there's that. And then other stuff, a couple puppet things, some for little kids, some for adults. Always trying to help where I can to get new Muppet things going.
Yeah.
So that's always something I'm trying to, push for and try and get excited and help create whatever we can with the Muppets. So that's that kind of stuff. And then your other question was the difference in between now pitching things with streaming?
With streaming, yeah. So, I mean, just streaming having upended the industry in lots of different ways. How do you think about how, you create your shows in the world of streaming? Maybe things haven't changed for you at all because you've been able to navigate the world of streaming, obviously, with Disney Plus, and I'm sure lots of other ways.
No,
so,
I mean,
always just kind of curious about like the state of affairs today in filmmaking and television production, and sort of how do we navigate, sort of the future of that? How are you thinking about navigating the future of it?
well, I think,
Streaming and like network pitching used to be the same, right? It was the same process. Then COVID came and streaming became tricky because everything was over Zoom, right? So
Interesting.
now you're pitching here,
Right.
right?
Right.
You're not sitting in the room. You don't have a personal connection. It's different. It's a different feeling. Writers' rooms are this, which was very unusual for people like a seasoned person like Adam Goldberg. Right? He's used to being in a room and that interaction and so that becomes a new thing. But I think the way things seem to be moving forward, and a few things that I think I learned from the Mayhem series, not so much the Haunted Mansion special that we did, but more of the series approach. I think there's less patience happening in social media world, which is also in a sense streaming, right? There's a pace to it all. People don't have the patience like they used to. And I think what they're looking for are more affordable, right? So you're thinking about budget, right? That's always number one. How big is this idea going to get? How can I find the balance of what I want it to be and what I think can be bought, right? That combined with, is the material bingeable, right? These are the surfacey questions, right?
I see.
Is the material bingeable? Is it enticing content? Is it keep you on the seat of your pants so that you're going to click to the next episode? Does it keep them watching? That's what the streamers want to know. Will this show keep them there? Right? And how long will they stay?
So that's interesting. So it's not necessarily about a season 2 or a season 3 or longevity. It's about this season and can we keep audiences?
I think so. And also, but taking these things also and applying it to more seasons, if you can, for example, is it going to draw people back for the next season? Are you leaving a cliffhanger that's strong enough for people to go, oh, what?
Got it.
Let me go right there. I'm going to season 2.
Yep. Yep.
So, unfortunately, maybe that feels like it's not as original as
Mhm.
maybe you'd like things to be, right? So there's not a lot of risk,
I see.
I would say, right now. There's a lot of safety involved. And what are people familiar with? But can I create something that people feel comfortable with or have maybe even seen, sadly enough?
Mhm.
Uh, because they say there's only 7 plots, right? Anyway, but is it something that people are comfortable with, have maybe experienced to a degree, but how do I add my unique twist in the storytelling and the characters? How do I add the uniqueness? How do I find the balance of all this stuff that needs to make people eat it up quick?
Yeah.
You know, as sad as that sounds, I think that's where we're headed. Unless you're the person who has a superstar,
Mhm.
right? Whoever's hot and big and is going to get the audience, then I think they take risks with something that doesn't feel so, much like other things.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
think if you're trying to get some things made until you can get to that point, I think you got to find how do I fit in, but make myself a little bit unique with
Almost
those
like a
parameters.
almost like a as close to a sure bet as possible is the way to package it all up. That's what
I
wins.
suppose, and there isn't a sure bet, right? No matter what you do, you just don't
Know
know.
who you're ultimately going to be pitching to and who they're going to now sell this idea to their boss to make it happen. You just don't know what happens in that process. But our job is to find something that gets people excited, that feels like it will not only be exciting and fun and original, but also sell subscriptions.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing all
Yeah.
of your time here. I hope I've done a decent job as a podcast host, because I understand you, sir, are a podcast host as well. So for all the listeners out there, it is the Barretta Brothers podcast. It's on YouTube and it's at thebarettabrothers.com. Please check it out. And Bill, thank you for all of your time and all of your wonderful stories and advice today. Really appreciate it. It's been wonderful. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, buddy, and good luck at the Playhouse. I can't
I'd
wait.
like to hear what you think of it, and I know you're going to shine. I know they're going to love you there, and so have fun, have a great time. Don't take it too seriously, and
That's right.
just enjoy the ride.
Thank you, brother.
And thanks, Alex, for doing a great job.
Yeah, Alex, bang up job, buddy. But I just want to point out, we made your job easy because I believe there's only one small edit. So, I mean, I think it's actually us that made your job easy. I just want to point that out. If I could just take credit for that real fast. We've been great
Right.
guests and hosts. So just
What I meant was
Thank you, Alex, for you being there for him.
that's right for me. That's right. I think, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
buddy. See you later.
All right, man. Okay, buddy.
Adios. Hey, Thomas here again. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. The show is better when I get to hear from you. Got a question to ask our producer? Or you got a show idea or a guest I should interview? Maybe you just want to tell me that you love or can't stay on the show. Either way, I want to hear from you. You can reach me at bigbreakpod@gmail.com, and you can find my acting profile at castingtom.com or at castingtom. Big Break Pod is created and hosted by me, Thomas M. Copeland. The show is a proud member of the Pod Populi Network. Original music by me. Find the show online at bigbreakpod.com and at Big Break Pod.